The asteroid mining station Nexus 7 hung in the void, like a metallic spider, its 8 extraction arms reaching hungrily toward the resource-rich rocks floating nearby. To most beings in the galaxy, it represented the pinnacle of Zephyrian engineering, a testament to their species' supposed superiority in all matters technological and administrative. The fact that half the actual work was done by humans was, naturally, a minor detail the Zephyrians preferred to overlook. Kexthara Velmorin stood at the observation deck, his crystalline exoskeleton catching the artificial light as he surveyed his domain. As the station's chief operations overseer, he commanded a workforce of 300 beings from 17 different species. The humans, of course, occupied the bottom rung of this carefully constructed hierarchy, useful for their surprising durability and peculiar ability to improvise solutions, but hardly the sort of beings one consulted on matters of actual importance. "The quantum lattice scans are complete, Overseer," announced his assistant, a younger Zephyrian whose chittering voice carried the appropriate tone of reverence. "The new asteroid shows exceptional prometrium deposits." Kexthara's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Prometrium was the lifeblood of faster-than-light travel, and this particular rock appeared to contain enough to fund his next 3 promotions. The mining schedules showed they could extract it all within 2 standard cycles, an impressive turnaround that would certainly catch the attention of the consortium's board. Down in Maintenance Bay 7, the human they'd assigned to calibrate the extraction equipment was proving to be unnecessarily talkative. She'd been muttering to herself for the past hour, occasionally making small adjustments to the resonance modulators that, frankly, Kexthara found rather presumptuous. Humans had barely mastered interplanetary flight when the Zephyrians had already mapped half the galaxy. What could she possibly know about quantum lattice extraction that his certified engineers hadn't already considered? The human her designation was simply maintenance specialist. 3 to 7 had an annoyingly persistent habit of asking questions that demonstrated a complete misunderstanding of proper workplace hierarchy. Just yesterday, she'd actually approached his desk with what she called concerns about the extraction methodology. "The resonance frequencies you're planning to use," she'd said, her voice carrying that peculiar human inflection that somehow managed to sound both respectful and insubordinate simultaneously. "They're going to create harmonic interference with the asteroid's natural crystal matrix. The prometrium veins run along fault lines that could destabilize if you hit them with synchronized pulses." Kexthara had barely managed to suppress his amusement. The idea that a human maintenance worker, could identify flaws in extraction protocols developed by the galaxy's foremost mining engineers was so absurd, it bordered on the entertaining. He'd dismissed her politely, of course. No need to be rude to the help, even when they overstepped their boundaries so dramatically. Now, watching the final preparations through the deck's viewing portal, Kexthara felt the familiar satisfaction of a well-executed plan coming together. The extraction arrays hummed with power, their crystalline cores aligned perfectly with the target asteroid's weak points. Everything proceeded according to the specifications his team had spent months perfecting. The human was still down there, he noticed, making what appeared to be unauthorized modifications to the secondary stabilizers. Kexthara made a mental note to speak with her supervisor about proper protocol adherence. Humans, for all their useful qualities, seemed to have difficulty understanding that there were reasons why certain beings made decisions while others simply followed orders. "Overseer," his assistant's voice carried a note of urgency that immediately commanded attention. "The human specialist is requesting permission to speak with you directly. She says it's regarding the extraction sequence." Kexthara's exoskeleton shifted in what humans might recognize as a sigh. "Very well. Route her through." The communication panel crackled to life, and the human's voice filled the observation deck with its characteristic flat tones. "Overseer Velmorin, I need you to halt the extraction sequence. The resonance buildup is approaching critical thresholds faster than your models predicted." "Specialist 3 to 7, Kexthara replied, his voice carrying the patient condescension he reserved for particularly slow learners. "I appreciate your enthusiasm for your work. However, The extraction parameters have been thoroughly tested and verified by engineers with decades of experience in quantum lattice manipulation. Your concerns, while noted, are not supported by our comprehensive analysis. A pause followed that somehow managed to convey volumes about human frustration. Overseer, with respect, your comprehensive analysis didn't account for the specific mineral composition of this asteroid. The prometrium isn't just sitting there waiting to be scooped up, it's integrated into a metamorphic crystal structure that's going to react violently to synchronized resonance extraction. Kexthara's mandibles clicked in what his species considered gentle mockery. Around him, his bridge crew exchanged the subtle gestures that indicated shared amusement at the human's presumption. Specialist, your dedication to safety protocols is commendable, but I assure you that our equipment is more than capable of handling any complications that might arise. Please return to your assigned duties. The communication cut with what sounded suspiciously like a muttered human profanity, though the translation protocols weren't quite sophisticated enough to capture the specific meaning. "Shall I log this as a formal insubordination incident?" asked his assistant, stylus poised over the duty report. "No need," Kexthara replied magnanimously. Humans often become anxious when they don't fully understand the processes they're supporting. It's only natural for her to express concern, even when that concern island misguided. The extraction sequence initiated with the precise choreography that had made Zephyrian mining operations the envy of 17 sectors. Primary resonance arrays activated in perfect synchronization, sending carefully calibrated quantum pulses deep into the asteroid's core. Secondary stabilizers engaged automatically, maintaining the delicate balance between extraction efficiency and structural integrity. For approximately 3 minutes and 17 seconds, everything proceeded exactly according to plan. The first sign of trouble manifested as a harmonic vibration that shouldn't have existed according to any of their models. Kexthara frowned, his compound eyes tracking the readouts that were beginning to display numbers outside their expected parameters. The vibration intensified, creating a low-frequency resonance that seemed to emanate from the asteroid itself. "Engineering, report status," he commanded, though his voice carried less confidence than it had moments earlier. "Overseer, we're seeing unexpected feedback loops in the extraction matrix. The asteroid's responding to the resonance pulses in ways that don't match our geological surveys." Below in the maintenance bay, Specialist 3-7 was moving with the sort of urgent efficiency that suggested she'd been expecting exactly this development. Her hands flew over the control interfaces, making rapid adjustments to systems that, technically, she shouldn't have had clearance to access. The harmonic vibrations intensified, creating a phenomenon that the station's sensors struggled to classify. The asteroid wasn't simply yielding its prometrium, it was beginning to resonate in harmony with the extraction arrays, amplifying their output in a feedback loop that threatened to tear both the rock and the mining equipment apart. "Shut down the primary arrays," Kexthara ordered, though his voice lacked its earlier certainty. "Unable to comply, Overseer. The resonance lock is preventing safe shutdown procedures. If we cut power abruptly, the backlash could overload our entire power grid." This was, Kexthara realized with growing alarm, precisely the sort of scenario that competent engineering was supposed to prevent. The extraction arrays were now caught in a resonance cascade with the asteroid's crystal matrix, creating a feedback loop that his engineers had somehow failed to anticipate despite their decades of experience and comprehensive analysis. The communication panel crackled back to life without authorization, carrying the human's voice with an edge of controlled urgency. "Overseer, I can stabilize this if you give me full access to the extraction control systems. But you need to do it now, before the harmonic resonance tears your equipment apart." Kexthara's compound eyes darted between the increasingly alarming readouts and the faces of his engineering team, who were beginning to display the sort of panicked confusion that indicated their training hadn't quite prepared them for this particular emergency. "What exactly are you proposing to do?" he asked, though asking a human for technical advice felt like admitting a level of incompetence that his career might not survive. The resonance cascade is feeding on the synchronized pulses from your arrays. I need to break the harmonic lock by introducing controlled asymmetric frequencies, essentially creating deliberate interference patterns that will disrupt the feedback loop without causing a catastrophic power surge. It sounded like the sort of improvised nonsense that humans were known for, the kind of unorthodox thinking that proper engineering protocols were designed to prevent. Unfortunately, proper engineering protocols were currently proving spectacularly inadequate for the situation at hand. "This is highly irregular," Kexthara muttered, though the statement felt increasingly pointless as his billion-credit mining operation continued its slide toward complete disaster. Irregular beats exploded, the human replied with characteristic bluntness. "Your choice, Overseer." The asteroid's resonance had now reached frequencies that were affecting the station's structural integrity. Kexthara could feel the vibrations through the deck plating, a phenomenon that his engineers were frantically trying to explain with increasingly complex technical jargon that boiled down to, "We don't know why this is happening." "Grant her access," he commanded, the words tasting like career suicide. What followed was perhaps the most educational 27 minutes of Kexthara's professional life. The human worked with a precision that suggested intimate familiarity with both Zephyrian extraction technology and the specific quirks of prometrium-bearing crystal matrices. Her fingers moved across the control interfaces with the confidence of someone who understood not just what each system did, but how they interacted with each other in ways that apparently hadn't occurred to his certified engineers. She began by isolating individual array segments, breaking the synchronized pulse pattern that was feeding the resonance cascade. Instead of the elegant uniformity that Zephyrian engineering principles demanded, she introduced deliberate irregularities, controlled chaos that somehow began to calm the violent harmonics, threatening to tear everything apart. "The prometrium veins are following natural fracture lines in the asteroid's structure," she explained as she worked, her voice carrying the sort of casual authority that Kexthara was accustomed to hearing only from senior engineers. "Your synchronized pulses were hitting those fracture lines at exactly the repletions and frequency needed to make the entire crystal matrix ring like a bell. All I'm doing is detuning that bell." The resonance readings began to stabilize, dropping from critical levels to merely concerning ones. The extraction arrays, no longer caught in a destructive feedback loop, resumed their normal operation under the human's carefully orchestrated control. The asteroid continued to yield its prometrium, but now at sustainable rates that wouldn't result in the explosive disintegration of either the mining equipment or the station itself. Kexthara watched in stunned silence as the human completed what his team of experts had deemed impossible. The extraction process continued, but under entirely different parameters than those his engineers had spent months calculating. The human had essentially redesigned their entire approach in real time, using principles that somehow combined orthodox Zephyrian engineering with innovations that no Zephyrian had apparently considered. "How?" he asked finally, his voice barely carrying over the now stable hum of the extraction arrays. "Did you know this would work?" The human's response carried the sort of weary patience usually reserved for explaining obvious concepts to slow learners. "Because I've been doing this for 15 years. Before I took this maintenance position, I was senior extraction engineer for the Terran Mining Consortium. We've been dealing with prometrium-bearing asteroids since before your people knew humans existed." The implications of this statement settled over the observation deck like a toxic cloud. Kexthara's engineers, his highly trained, extensively certified, supposedly superior engineers, had been outperformed by someone they'd relegated to maintenance duties based purely on her species membership. "Why?" Kexthara asked, though he wasn't entirely sure he wanted to hear the answer. "Are you working in maintenance if you have senior engineering credentials?" "Because when I applied for the engineering position, your hiring board told me that humans lacked the sophisticated understanding necessary for complex extraction operations. They offered me maintenance work instead, said I could work my way up if I proved myself capable of following simple procedures." The silence that followed was broken only by the steady rhythm of the extraction arrays, now operating at optimal efficiency under the human's modified parameters. Kexthara's assistant was studiously avoiding eye contact, apparently finding the deck plating fascinating. His engineers were engaged in the sort of animated technical discussions that usually followed major equipment failures, though in this case they were trying to understand how their equipment had been prevented from failing. The extraction rate is actually 12% higher than our original projections, reported one of his technicians, his voice carrying the bewildered tone of someone whose fundamental assumptions about reality had been thoroughly challenged. Kexthara descended to the maintenance bay, where he found the human calmly making final adjustments to the stabilization systems. She looked up as he approached, her expression carrying neither triumph nor resentment, simply the professional courtesy of someone completing her assigned duties. Specialist 3 to 7, he began, then stopped. The formal designation suddenly seemed absurd given the circumstances. What should I call you? My name is Quinn Reeves, Overseer. And before you ask, yes, I tried to warn you about this exact scenario yesterday. Kexthara's exoskeleton shifted in what humans might recognize as embarrassment. Your warning was noted but not fully appreciated. I apologize for dismissing your expertise. Quinn's expression softened slightly. Apology accepted. But you might want to review your hiring practices if you're going to continue operating in sectors with human-explored asteroid fields. We've mapped the mineral composition patterns out here pretty thoroughly. Over the following hours, as the extraction operation continued under Quinn's oversight, Kexthara began to understand the scope of his organization's miscalculation. The human possessed not just theoretical knowledge of extraction engineering, but practical experience with the specific challenges of this sector's geological formations. Her 15 years with the Terran Mining Consortium had included operations in asteroid fields that the Zephyrians were only now beginning to explore. The other humans on the station, Kexthara noticed, didn't seem particularly surprised by Quinn's expertise. They'd apparently been aware of her background all along, but had learned not to volunteer information that their supervisors weren't interested in hearing. How many others? Kexthara asked his assistant as they reviewed personnel files in his office. Others. Overseer. How many other humans on this station have qualifications that we've overlooked? The resulting review revealed a pattern that Kexthara found deeply unsettling. The human designated as Custodial Supervisor 2 to 4 held advanced degrees in atmospheric engineering. Nutritional Services Coordinator 1 to 9 had previously managed supply chains for exploration fleets. General Maintenance 5 to 2 was a former Starship Navigation Officer with intimate knowledge of the hyperspace routes the station used for cargo shipments. The Zephyrian hiring protocols, Kexthara realized, had systematically relegated qualified humans to menial positions based on the assumption that their species lacked the sophistication for technical work. This assumption had been so deeply embedded in their organizational culture that no one had thought to actually verify human qualifications before assigning duties. The extraction operation concluded 3 days ahead of schedule, yielding 17% more prometrium than originally projected. The improved efficiency resulted from Quinn's modifications to the resonance patterns, which had eliminated the energy losses that the original design had accepted as unavoidable. Kexthara stood once again at the observation deck, watching the final loads of refined prometrium being transferred to cargo vessels. His reputation within the consortium would certainly benefit from the operation's success, though he now understood that the credit belonged elsewhere. Quinn had returned to her maintenance duties without fanfare, apparently content to let the official reports credit innovative Zephyrian engineering techniques for the operation's success. When Kexthara had offered to recommend her for promotion to the engineering department, she declined with a smile that suggested she found something amusing about the offer. I'm comfortable where I am, Overseer. Besides, someone needs to keep the maintenance systems running, and I've grown rather fond of the work. She hadn't mentioned that maintenance personnel had access to every system on the station, or that their duties often required understanding complex interactions between different departments. Kexthara was beginning to suspect that the human staff's apparent contentment with menial assignments might reflect a deeper understanding of how the station actually functioned than his management hierarchy possessed. The final cargo vessel departed Nexus 7, with its holds full of high-grade prometrium, leaving the station to prepare for its next assignment. Kexthara's engineers were already analyzing Quinn's modifications, trying to understand principles that somehow combined orthodox extraction theory with innovations that challenged their fundamental assumptions about resonance dynamics. In his final report to the consortium board, Kexthara recommended a comprehensive review of human personnel assignments across all mining operations. The recommendation was diplomatic in its wording, carefully avoiding any suggestion that Zephyrian management practices might have been systematically flawed. Instead, it focused on the untapped potential of human workers and the efficiency gains that might result from optimized duty assignments. The response from headquarters was swift and positive. The board was pleased with the operation's success and interested in any innovations that could improve future extraction yields. They approved Kexthara's recommendation for a sector-wide personnel review, though their enthusiasm was clearly focused on the promised efficiency improvements rather than any concerns about equitable treatment. Kexthara kept his more troubling realizations to himself. The implications of their systematic underestimation of human capabilities extended far beyond mining operations, touching on fundamental questions about Zephyrian assumptions regarding species hierarchy and technological sophistication. These were not the sort of insights that career advancement was built upon. Quinn continued her maintenance duties with the same quiet competence she'd always displayed, though Kexthara noticed that other department heads had begun consulting her on technical matters with increasing frequency. The informal consultations were never documented in official reports, but the station's overall operational efficiency continued to improve in ways that the management staff found difficult to explain through conventional analysis. 6 months later, when Nexus 7 encountered another unprecedented resonance cascade scenario, Quinn's assistance was requested immediately rather than as a last resort. Her solutions were implemented without question, and the crisis was resolved with minimal disruption to operations. The official incident report credited advanced Zephyrian engineering protocols for the successful resolution, though everyone involved understood where the expertise had actually originated. Quinn's name appeared in the technical appendix as consulting maintenance specialist, a designation that satisfied bureaucratic requirements while avoiding uncomfortable questions about human capabilities. Kexthara never again made the mistake of dismissing warnings from his maintenance staff, regardless of their species designation. He also instituted informal technical consultation sessions, where human personnel could share observations without challenging official hierarchies. These sessions were not documented in management reports, but they proved remarkably effective at preventing operational difficulties. The broader implications of the Nexus 7 incident rippled slowly through Zephyrian mining operations, though the official narrative remained focused on innovative engineering solutions rather than management reform. Human personnel across the sector began receiving expanded duty assignments that better utilized their qualifications, though these changes were implemented quietly to avoid drawing attention to previous oversights. Quinn Reeves remained at Maintenance Bay 7, where she continued to ensure that complex extraction operations proceeded smoothly, despite the best efforts of certified engineers to overcomplicate them. She never openly acknowledged her role in transforming sector-wide operational procedures, preferring to let her work speak for itself. Years later, when Kexthara had achieved the senior management position that the Nexus 7 success had made possible, he occasionally reflected on the incident that had redefined his understanding of competence and capability. The memory of Quinn's patient warnings, dismissed with such casual arrogance, served as a reminder of how easily expertise could be overlooked when it arrived in unexpected forms. The galaxy, he had learned, was full of beings whose capabilities bore little resemblance to the assumptions that others made about them. The wise leader, he now understood, was one who listened carefully to warnings, especially from those whom conventional wisdom deemed unworthy of serious attention. After all, when someone calmly warns you not to do something because they know exactly what will happen next, perhaps the most intelligent response is to ask them what they recommend instead before you find yourself scattered on the floor, wondering how your supposedly superior expertise had proven so thoroughly inadequate to the task at hand.